Where it's season, friendly. Real life, no pretending. Every season, every moment, we're choosing how we live it. Curated on purpose. We talk it out, we grow through it. Take a breath, lean into it. Let's live life.
Hey, it's your girl Candy J, and I thank you for tuning in to Curated on Purpose, where intention meets authenticity. This is a space for real conversation about life, faith, growth, and what it truly looks like to live on purpose. Because if life doesn't just happen, we choose what we give our energy to. So here we talk it out, we sort it out, and we're intentional and curate what we're carrying forward. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's live on purpose. And I'm excited to welcome Shakana. She is a licensed clinical social worker out of Florida who is out here helping people heal, grow, and also she is helping them get their lives together with faith, compassion, and a whole lot of encouragement. Okay, so Shakana earned her Master's of Social Work in 2012, and since then she has worn many hats: child welfare, safety services, prevention work, lead outpatient therapist, and now she is the powerhouse behind the private practice C. Jaquise Enterprises. She also is a published author of Simple Sayings, Sprinkles of Encouragement, a speaker and an advocate, and someone who truly has a heart for seeing people restored and whole. And let me add this. She forgot to mention that she's a comedian by nature, and she will have you laughing. And I would say she'll have you hollering. So get comfortable and help me welcome my girl, Shakana Downs. All right, so Shakana, welcome in. Thank you for taking out the time to be with me. But also, um, yes, ma'am. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna do a couple of icebreakers just to kind of warm up, and then we'll kind of get talking about. So the icebreakers are actually around our conversation, I should say. And so what we're talking about tonight is mental health and normalizing therapy in our households, in every household, and trying to remove the stigma. So the question is, if your family had a group chat back then, what would it be called?
Oh, Jesus. Ooh. Uh, ooh, that's a good one. Probably y'all ain't ready for this.
Y'all
Knowing
ain't
my
ready.
family and the things that are discussed and personalities, yeah, it's not. It can't be released. It got to be
Oh,
hidden
okay.
where
Oh,
it's
it's on
supposed
release,
to be.
right? If you had to pick one quote that fits your life, what would it be?
Oh, um, that fits my life.
Hmm.
I can't make this up.
That's what it would be. I
I
can't make
cannot
this
make this
up.
stuff. Other people, my quote is, "You cannot be good to and for anybody else if you're not good to and for yourself."
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yes, that's a good one. Mine would be the unspoken truths. I am truthful. Don't ask me unless you want to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to let you know. And it's not because I mean to, but sometimes it just comes out. Okay. So with the quote, my favorite quote is, if my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, I know I can achieve it. Um, so I would say that was one from high school that is always still with me. Before we get started, I would like to give a plug out and shout out for Shakana for her upcoming events. Shakana, what you got going on?
So I got two things coming up in the first half of the year for the ladies. The first one is Sacred Space, Conversations Your Mama Didn't Have. It is a week-long virtual summit for women where we're going to be creating a safe space for women to talk about topics that we don't often get to discuss safely or without being judged or talked about. Things like toxic relationships, the real truth about parenting, those conversations where you be like, I don't want these kids no more. F them kids, those kind of conversations. Talking about sexuality, rest and self care, what it looks like to be single, successful, and childless, and a whole bunch of other great conversations. And that is all virtual. Tickets are on sale for that. On my website at cjaquise.com. You can pay $35 for the whole summit. It's super cheap. If you don't want to come to the whole thing and you just want a night or a couple of nights, you can do those individually for $7 a night. But I promise you, you're going to want to hear the whole thing because it's going to bless you real good. I got some amazing ladies coming to facilitate these conversations who are experienced in all of these things and fields. I have motivational speakers, radio personalities, therapists, social workers, parenting experts, all kinds of good folks coming to share and to lead off these conversations. Then in May is the second annual mental health retreat, and that'll be here in Central Florida, May 14th through the 18th. We're going to be in a beautiful Airbnb over in Davenport, which is close to Kissimmee and all the theme parks and all that good stuff. We have private pool, hot tub. We're going to have amazing food by Classy Claus Catering. Phenomenal workshops by some of my colleagues and myself. Time to just relax and refresh. This year's theme is Discovering Me. So we'll have game night, we'll have workshops, time to just relax, kick back in the pool, cut up, crack jokes, and really dig deep into who you are. Not just who life has forced you to become, but who should you be right now, and how do you get to that place? So that's the first two things. Wow. I got some other stuff coming up, so connect with me. I'm doing some mental health things for men this year. I am available for booking, so if you need somebody to come, holler at your girl. Have suitcases, we'll travel.
Have suitcases and we'll travel. Okay, so she's got a lot on her plate, but guess what? She's fire. If I have a question about something or I want the professional, if I want the perspective of a professional, I'm going to call Shakana. Why? Because she's going to give you the truth, and she's going to give it to you real. And we don't have time for the surface level. We need to go get deep sometimes. So thank you, Shakana, for those shout outs, and we'll make sure to post all of that and make sure that we support as well. I definitely am going to try my best to do the virtual. I do have graduation in May, so my daughter will be graduating, so yes, ma'am. So the first question I think that would be appropriate is, why do you think that mental health still feels uncomfortable to talk about in so many households? I'm finding that a lot of times people don't want to talk about it. And we had sayings when we were younger that we heard is, we don't have problems, we don't have issues. What do you have stress? What's your stress? Why do you have stress as children? And we know now, we should know now, that kids have problems and issues and stress and things that's going on. So again, the question is, why do you think that mental health still feels uncomfortable to talk about in many households?
I think it's a combination of things. One, we, especially African American community, were mostly taught what happens in this house stays in this house. You don't go outside talking about your business, telling what's going on in the household and the family. That ain't nobody else's business. You keep your mouth shut. We deal with things in the house. Two, it's just a lot of taboo surrounding therapists, because historically and even now, the numbers of therapists who look like us are very low in comparison to Caucasians and other races. So can a therapist that doesn't look like you help you? Absolutely. But are there some cultural things that they may not understand or get on the level that you need? Absolutely. So I think those two things are probably the biggest, because Big Mama and them wasn't getting ready to take you somewhere to talk about your personal business with the white folks. Just realistically, it wasn't going to happen, because we don't want them in our business and knowing what's going on in our house, because of things that were happening historically in politics and economics, just in the state of the world. But two, it was just that old saying, oh, they just crazy. Don't nobody pay no attention to them. And mental health wasn't taken seriously. You know, somebody in the family may have been stressed or depressed or have anxiety, and then there was the whole lack of knowledge, because a lot of things just weren't being taught mainstream. They weren't being spoken about in schools, in churches, in community settings for people to know, hey, this is a mental health issue. The bigger diagnoses, schizophrenia, personality disorders, things like that, yes, absolutely, people talked about that, but people weren't talking about depression. They weren't talking about anxiety. They weren't talking about developmental delays. They weren't talking about behavior disorders, any of those things. The more common thing that came up was ADHD when they started labeling all the kids. So then it kind of came and knocked on the door. So a lot of people had to start dealing with it. But before that, nobody was saying anything.
That's true. That's so true. So what would you say to any parent, or just even if they're not parents, what would you say to them listening right now regarding this?
One, it's always good to have a neutral party who does not know you, who does not have expectations of you, who does not have preconceived notions of you to talk to. That's what a therapist is. It's a neutral party who's there to listen, to give you tools, resources, and knowledge. Not to judge you, not to condemn you, not to put you down, not to tell you, oh no, you crazy. That shouldn't be in your therapist language. If it is, find a new therapist. But sometimes people don't have the capacity to help with mental health issues at home, at church, in the community, because one, they're not knowledgeable, two, they're not equipped, three, they don't have the education, and if they're not a professional, they can't diagnose you. And let me just say this, since we're dealing with taboos and things, a diagnosis is really just medical language to let people know what your struggle is. It's a universal language. So I teach my patients, especially kids, how to articulate their diagnosis in a way that's empowering rather than a label. So if you have a diagnosis, there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a way to help other medical professionals and people who may be on a care team know what you're dealing with, instead of you having to repeat symptoms all the time. But therapy is your safe space. Everybody's home is not safe. Everybody's church is not safe. Everybody's person that they vent to is not safe. And again, they may not be equipped to help you with what's going on. And it may cause more damage than good when you go to people who aren't equipped to help you, or who don't really truly understand what the issue is. For instance, if you have trauma and you go to somebody who is unfamiliar with trauma symptoms, who hasn't been trained in trauma-informed care, who knows nothing about the long-lasting effects of trauma, they may brush it off, downplay your symptoms and tell you, oh, get over that. Oh, that happens to everybody. That's just part of life. Because we all have trauma. But it doesn't mean that you just brush it off, sweep it under the rug, and get over it. Sometimes those effects from trauma can be lifelong. They can affect multiple areas of your life. And if you go to somebody for help that isn't equipped, it can make you feel like, why should I even say anything? Nobody understands. I'm not going to open up and tell anybody this. I'm ashamed already. I'm already dealing with guilt. I'm already hurt, upset, can't function. Why am I going to keep telling people when they ain't doing nothing to help me? So It kind of snowballs. But therapy is your safe space. You can
And
go.
therapy, it's important. It's important because therapy, we have to change the perspective of what it is. Therapy is, for me, is maintenance. Therapy is to make sure that I am not harming myself or anybody else by my own self thoughts, or even what I tell my children, what I'm putting into their ear gates, because I think it's important to have somebody else to bounce your ideas off of or your frustrations off of, so that we won't continue to hurt our children because it was just something we said. What, I'm 41 years old. There may be something from my past that I will always, you don't know sometimes that it triggers you and you'll remember something that happened or what was said, that will affect you in the long term. So I try to, even with my children, or even when I am talking, I try to slow down and process and think about it before just saying, blah, 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 you're on my nerves. Because if not, in the long run, in the long term, it's damaging. So,
That's that's the other part of therapy. A lot of time, regardless of client and who's coming in, we spend time working on communication because people tend to think they're great communicators and they're really not. They don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. They yell. They shut down. They gaslight. Like so many negative traits. A lot of people are aggressive or passive aggressive communicators, and then sometimes people who are traumatized are very passive communicators, and they just let people walk all over them, take advantage of them, say whatever they want to, and they never stand up for themselves. They don't have a voice. So I spend a lot of time working with people on learning how to communicate properly and in a healthy way, how to express and identify their emotions, and using I statements for that. So you take ownership of your feelings, and not do a lot of finger pointing and blaming in your language, because that only escalates things and makes it worse. So sometimes once we get the communication together, everything else just kind of falls in line, because that's the root problem. You don't know how to talk to people. So now you and your husband arguing with your kids, you add it with your boss because you're an aggressive communicator, or you passive aggressive and you nice nasty and don't nobody want to talk to you. You pop it off at
nobody.
everybody. So,
Exactly.
for me, a big part of the work is giving tools, teaching people those things so that they can take care of their own mental health. I tell them, listen, I ain't here to fix you. I'm here to give you tools. I'm here to help you come to your own conclusion and learn how to maintain your own mental health.
Wow. That's really good, Shakana, because it's so true. It's so true. And so I thought when I first started therapy many years ago, I thought that it was somebody to give me advice and tell me how to fix my life. And then I realized that that's not what it is. It is taking what you say and let's try to work on a different way, to a tool that may help you communicate better. Because we may say things in the wrong way. We say it wrong. And then you're trying to fix it, and it's hard to come back from that.
Good therapy should be a mirror. It should really show you yourself, so you come to your own conclusions about the things that you need to fix. And the therapist is there to help you figure out how to fix those things, not to point out every flaw or every issue or whatever. I can't speak for every therapist, but for me, when my clients come in, I listen to why they're in therapy, get their history, their background, and my first question to them is, what do you want to work on? Because I can give them a whole laundry list of things that I see from talking to them, but if it's not something they're willing or ready to work on, we doing the work in vain, because they're not going to buy into it. They're not going to be committed to doing the work. And I'll say this for parents: if you have a child that you're thinking about starting with therapy, make sure they're willing, because if you force them to go and they sit in there and don't talk, it's not going to help anybody.
You're wasting your
Therapist's
time.
gonna be frustrated, your child's gonna be frustrated, and you're gonna be wasting a lot of money. So have a conversation with them. Talk to them about what therapy is, what it's for, why you feel like they should go, or why you think it would be helpful, and make sure that they're willing. And if your child comes to you and says, hey, I want to talk to somebody, baby, sign them up real quick.
Sign them up.
Don't hesitate. Don't ask no question. Okay, sign them up. Get that insurance card. Find out who's available, who's in network, or if you don't have insurance, find somebody that you can afford, or that has a sliding scale. Because if they're coming to you saying, "I want to talk to somebody" or "I need to talk to somebody," that's a cry for help. Don't ignore that. Don't brush it off. I don't care how you feel about it. Get them babies what they need.
I think that it all starts with you, meaning as a parent. So I think that therapy is easier for my children. Well, my daughter, my son hasn't got started, but he's about to, because we're going to get him one too. Because I feel like everybody needs that person. I think it starts with you. If we normalize therapy, if I have a therapist, then they're like, oh, well, it's not bad, because we do hear, oh, you must be crazy or you got something going on. Then you find them what? Oh, well, blah, blah, blah. No, I have a therapist. My husband has a therapist. My daughter has a therapist. And my son's about to get a therapist. Because it's not all just about somebody picking you apart. It's just about sometimes when you talk, you don't hear yourself. But when you say it to somebody else, you may hear it differently and have a different perspective. Like, you can have a thought of something, and then when you say it out loud to your therapist, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. That didn't even make sense of what I thought, how this should go. So, yes, I think that is so important. So here's the next question. This is a good question.
Before
Go
we
ahead.
go to the next question, let me just add this. Therapists have therapists. We go to therapy too. So it's not just reserved for a certain group of people or a specific type of folks. We go to therapy too, not just for our own stuff, but because we deal with other people's stuff all the time, and it's a lot to carry in the process. You spend 7-8 hours a day listening to other people's trauma, listening to other people's burdens and troubles and difficulties. If you don't know how to shut that part off and compartmentalize and leave it at work, you're going to be real heavy and crazy when you go home. You're going to be jacked up when you go to spend time with your family, because you're going to be thinking about all the stuff that you've heard all day. You're going to have vicarious trauma. So it's important for us, too, to have that safe space to go talk and decompress and get things off of our chest, and to say, you know what, these clients this week was off the chain. I was just like, because sometimes we have those weeks where you have a heavy load of trauma or whatever that week, and it can be draining. So, listen, all my therapist friends go to therapy. We have a group that meets. We have two. We have one that meets quarterly. It's a sip and support. And we go and we sit and we support each other.
Yes, I bet.
We talk about the things that have been trying. We share resources. We share our truths, and we decompress, talk about our frustrations, our wins, everything. So that's a safe space for us. It's like group therapy. So we have a couple of those. But the other thing I wanted to add, when you were talking about saying things to your therapist, I love when I get to have those reflective moments with my clients, because I'm like, did you just hear yourself? Did you hear what you just said? Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? You know, I'm telling the truth. I tell her, one of my clients told me, she said, I think we do better when my camera is off, or when your camera is off and I can't see your face. Because when they be talking crazy, my face talks back sometimes before my words do, and I just be looking at them like, oh, okay. That's what we doing this week? Oh, all right. And how did that work out for you? Right.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just gotta let people sit with it.
I notice sometimes when I'm in therapy, personally, I already know the answer or have the solution, but I don't know. It makes it almost like I had to get, not necessarily confirmation, but I don't know. Because I don't need a cheerleader.
You need to process it out loud.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So yeah, this is great because I've had so many thoughts in my head as you've been talking. Because it is important to have your own therapist, and if you have a therapist that doesn't have a therapist, you might want to run. Um, because I had a therapist at a time, and I've had like 3 or 4. I didn't even realize it, but one was like a free one, and you only had so many visits, and then my insurance didn't cover, so it was an option. It was great for what I needed it for, and I was appreciative for it at that time. I had, and earlier you were talking about having a therapist that looks like you. For some people, it doesn't matter, but I feel that sometimes. Well, I have African American, a black therapist, and I love her to death. And the reason is because she can read through my shenanigans. She can kind of not pick apart, because that's not the right word. She can do it in a way that she knows how to read the room. She can see through my BS. Okay, and so it may have started off with, yeah, I'm all right today, and let me tell you this, and I might even give her some distracting conversation, but then we'll get to the root of what it really is. And I think that there's a special power or connection that from a black woman to a black woman that we have. I've told her some stuff like, hey, you need to do this. She's like, yeah, you're right. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's more of where they are able to understand from a different perspective, from the African American's perspective, a black woman perspective, a mother to a son, a mother to a teenage daughter, things that I think that are very important, because we have been taught and things have been ingrained in us differently than what we really thought they were. And so I need somebody that can, again, read the room, tap into really what we're really talking about here, because it may sound something totally different. Mm-hmm. I had a situation happen to where I was mad. I was mad about something, and I didn't even realize that was what triggered. Somebody said, no more help, in a whole conversation we won't get into, but no more help, no more assistance, meaning like, I'm not helping you anymore. Don't ask me for a favor. And it took me down a whole spiral that I wasn't ready for. And it wasn't even said to me, but it was said to someone I care about. And then a situation came where I needed someone, and I completely shut down. And I didn't know that it was an issue. I really didn't. I was like, okay, well, I was mad about this, but no, I am self-sufficient. I'll figure it out on my own. But really, it causes us to shut down. And sometimes we need that therapist to say, hey, this is what you said, but this is what I really hear. Mm-hmm. And so, and it brings it back into perspective so that you can understand and digest and pull apart and say, oh, I didn't even see it like that, but it's really what it was. And so I'm grateful to have that sounding board for somebody that is non-judgmental and trusting and can be my person and be there for me when it's not always just emotional, but just being there, just to listen. Because sometimes we feel like we don't have anybody to listen, or without the feel like they're not judging you.
Yeah, it goes deeper than just somebody who looks like you, though, because yes, that is important to some people, but across BIPOC communities, and BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. That includes us, the West Indians, people who are from the Middle East, Asians, Pacific Islanders, all of those people groups. The numbers are lower as far as service, availability of service, the number of people who are receiving services, access to services, cost is higher a lot of times. So there's a lot of reasons why we aren't getting the care that we need. But also within that is the fact that a lot of people aren't culturally competent. Because when you get into the cultural nuances of things that people come to therapy for instance, the way white Americans parent their children, Haitian American parents parent their children, Caribbean parents parent their children versus African Americans versus Asian Americans versus Hispanics is totally different. There are some similarities, but culturally there are differences. There are differences in family structure, in how they view punishments, respect, so many small nuances that make a difference. And if you don't have someone who understands your culture, there are certain things they won't be able to help you with, or that they won't understand. And I'll even break it down to simple: biracial children and some of the things that they struggle with. I had a young client who was biracial. His mother was white, his father was black. His mom and dad had a very strained relationship. They were in an ugly custody battle. The young man was afraid to go visit his father because of how his mother talked about him.
Wow.
I had to have a couple of conversations with her. One, stop bashing this young man's dad in front of him. Those are adult conversations that he shouldn't even be privy to.
Not at all.
Two, he does not have another example who looks like him. And if all he ever hears is negativity about the person who looks like him, what does he think of himself? What are you setting up for him to believe about himself? And I had to have an honest heart-to-heart with her and her mother. I said, listen, regardless of what happens with him and his father, I said he needs a strong black male in his life that is positive, that is empowering, that is going to pour into him. I said, because if the only example that he knows who looks like him is constantly put down, spoken negatively of, and bashed, he's going to have self-esteem issues. The other part of that is there are things that you cannot possibly ever prepare this young man for, because you don't even have to think about it. I said, as long as he's in the safety of your home, he's good. I said, but when he walks out that door, they see a young black man. They don't care that he's mixed, that he's biracial. The world sees him as a young black man, which means he's automatically a threat, which means there are automatically certain biases already against him. There are certain forces working against him that you never even have to think about and can't possibly prepare him for. And she was like, oh my, her flowers was gasted. I said, I'm having this conversation with you now while he's young so you can make the corrections. I said, because when he gets a little bit older, ain't no more safety net. Right now he's little. I think he was like maybe 5 or 6 at the time. I said, but in a few years, when puberty hits and that height kicks in and his voice drops and he get a little bigger, ain't no more safety net. Ain't no bubble. And if he's not prepared and doesn't understand what the world looks like from a black male perspective, you're doing him a grave disservice. She got that baby what he needed.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing because it's funny you say that. I remember one day when the shift happened for my son. He's only 13. But the shift has already happened. So they start off with, oh, he is so cute. He's so precious. Look how cute he is. Look at his little self. Oh, he's funny when he's in a superhero outfit, you know what I mean? But then he was walking to school. Now, at that time, he was going to a school where they wear uniforms every day. And he may get a compliment of, oh, how nice he looks. But then one day, even though he had his uniform on, he said, Mom, I was walking to the bus stop or walking away from the bus stop, and a lady clutched her purse. I said, what? He said, I wasn't going to do nothing to her. He is an innocent child. And you know, at 13, well, he was younger than that. I think he might have been 12, 11, close to it. But the point is that you have to make sure that they have that example. You got to make sure that they know who they are and whose they are. And in speaking of who they are and whose they are, that does shift to our last question for tonight. And it is, how do you shift from that saying of pray about it to pray about it to talk about it. So we don't want to take Christ out of it. We love Jesus, but I don't think there's anything wrong with Jesus and counseling, Jesus and therapy and help and getting help. And I think that it is important in our community, whether you go to a black church, a multicultural church, a white church, whatever it is. I feel that if they can afford it or when they can afford it, they should have a therapist on staff, because just because people are preachers, just because they're pastors, does not mean they don't have their own trauma that they have not dealt with, and they may bounce that back on you or give you advice that is not good or sound because they haven't dealt with their own issues. So again, the question is, how do we shift from pray about it to talk about it?
I totally agree with what you said about churches needing professional counselors on staff. One, because pastoral counseling is very different than psychotherapy. Do we need to tackle everything from a spiritual aspect and pray about it? Absolutely. But everything mental health wise is not a spirit. It's not the devil. It's not you possessed. It's not you oppressed. Some things are medical. It's a chemical imbalance. There's a difference in the structure of your brain. It is psychological to behavior patterns, things like that. And church counselors aren't trained for things like that. Pastors don't get trained in mental health issues. They get trained in how to counsel from a biblical perspective on things. So most of the time their first advice is going to be pray about it, which we should be. I pray for my clients. I pray for the work that I do, that when they come in, that I have discernment to know what they need, that the work that I'm doing is effective, that it brings about healing, all of those things. I pray that God gives me wisdom and insight to understand what I'm being told and the impact that it's had, because for me, this isn't just a job. This is my outside the four walls ministry. And I absolutely agree that you can have Jesus and therapy. This was not something I chose. He said, hey, excuse me, I need you to go back to school and get these credentials for the doors I'm sending you through. So I know for me, this isn't just a job or something that I do. It's what I'm called to do. So when I sit down to have therapy, it's not just, oh, let me see what the diagnosis in this textbook is. I'm going to listen. I'm going to talk to you. But whether you talk to me about Jesus or not, guess what? I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray that the Lord heals whatever is going on with you, whether it is truly a mental health issue, something in your brain, if it's things that have happened to you, if it's a combination of both, whatever it is. So we need to be partnering, mental health professionals need to be partnering with churches, with community resources, with agencies, with other people, so that one, we break down the stigma so people are more willing to talk about it. Pastors need to be talking about mental health and not just, oh, it's the spirit on. No, you need to talk about mental health for real and quit hiding the things that happen to people in the church that cause them to have mental health problems and unresolved trauma. Pastors need to take care of their mental health, because a lot of times they don't. They're burnt out, they're struggling, they're tired, they're exhausted, run down, and now they got to care for a flock. And when the flock comes saying, hey, I have this mental health issue, they're not equipped. So we have to partner. We have to know our strengths. We have to know our limitations to say, that's not my lane. Let me refer you out to XYZ. I tell people all the time, yes, go to premarital counseling in the church, but also go see a therapist, a psychologist, somebody who's trained for counseling and therapy, because they're going to give it to you from a completely different perspective. If your kids is acting up, take them to the pastor. Have that conversation, talk to them, but have them evaluated. If they have behavioral issues, developmental delays, mental health, if they're dealing with anxiety, depression, ADHD, ODD, whatever, take them to a doctor. Not just for an assessment, but if they need medication, get them the medication they need. Because a lot of times, and I'm going to say this, especially with ADHD, you're not going to see a lot of changes or progress without the medication, because it is a structural difference in the brain which causes the chemical receptors to respond differently. So without that medication, your improvements are going to be very minimal. But it also requires things like dietary changes, structure, organization, consistency, getting these babies and even adults off these tablets and screens because they're overstimulated. So it all has to work together. Yes, we need to be praying about it, but there's a practical piece too. Faith and works. You need both.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. And earlier you were talking about ADHD or any diagnosis, about, you know, putting labels versus like really how to use it, what tools to use to make sure that we're getting what we need and not just be a label. I'm ADHD. And so some people get upset when I say I'm ADHD. And I'm like, why? Because you are not your label. No, I'm not my label. But guess what? Everything about ADHD is not bad. I can hyper focus on something, and it can be a superpower. But it's all in what you can do. It takes more than a spanking, a whooping. It takes more than being in a corner, things being taken away. It just takes way more than that. So
I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times parents don't realize that when you have children who have mental health disorders or diagnoses, you have to parent differently. You have to. Well, one, you can't just blanket parent kids because they're individuals, but you really have to parent differently when you have a child who has ADHD, ODD, who's on the spectrum, any of those things, who has behavioral disorders. Discipline, structure, rewards, consistency, and consequences have to look different for each child. Have to.
that's very true, because I have a child that rewards don't work. Rewards don't work. Honestly, sometimes consequences don't work either. But that's when that's when I gotta really call on Jesus and say, all right, Lord, you're gonna have to give me the tool and the way to be able to take care of this child without gaining resentment, because resentment happens with parents, whether they want to be honest about it or not. They need to talk about it. That sometimes I know it can get frustrating, but we cannot give up on our children. We cannot give up on our children, our friends, our family, and sometimes people are diagnosed late. And I always used to think, why am I so delayed? And when I say delayed, I'm saying I feel like I was a late bloomer. And for a lot of things, I am a late bloomer. However, it's not about being late, it's when it was time. But also it's to the point to where it's because I didn't have what I needed. And it's not because my mom or my dad didn't want to give those to me. It's a lack of knowledge. I don't want to turn my baby into a zombie. Huh?
My oldest nephew was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder this past year, and as he was getting ready to graduate from high school, and we were all like, we can't believe nobody caught it, because we just thought he was a unique kid. He was himself. He's always been fascinated with cars and just kind of been a little quirky and to himself. And at the time, we didn't really think about, are these signs of autism, because he would play and do all the things. But as he got older, he was having those social issues and missing social cues and different things like that, having trouble with working and really the social settings. And I had a conversation with him shortly after he got diagnosed, because he was really down about it. And I told him, I said, it's only as limiting as you make it. I said, because you've made it this far and didn't even know. And look at all the things you've done and accomplished. I said, so it's all in how you think about it. I said, it can be your superpower because of the things that you are great at, because of the areas that you're very knowledgeable in and that you are drawn to. Use those to your advantage. Work on the limitations and improve the things that you can improve. I said, but you got a whole army behind you supporting you. This is only an issue if you make it one.
That's right. That's right. I mean, even when people get like bipolar diagnosis or whatever, sometimes they feel like their world is crumbling down. But again, you got to find, the cup half full, less than let more than half empty. And so, I'm gonna tell this little story real quick. So, basically, at a previous job that I had, I was really good at the job. I did well, but I had struggles at the job as well. Because when you have ADHD, you may have some issues with time management skills or and that could be in not just always about being late, but being about how long do I spend on this, how to break these things down. And there are so many tools that I think that people forget or don't know because of lack of knowledge. When I had an issue, and I stepped away from work for a little bit, it was like a week. And when I had that issue, they were like, Candace, how can I help you? Well, guess what? I don't know how you can help me because I don't know how I can help me. I'm just here, but you're saying, how can I help? But every solution that was provided or every thing that I offered as like maybe a solution, it was shut down, right? So I'm like, okay, well, you asked me. I said, well, why don't you hold my work for a week? Let me get caught up, just thinking of things like that. And everything that I heard was no. And so that becomes very frustrating. But it took me to step back and resign from that job to figure out what it really was. And so what I always try to do and advocate for people that don't know, people that have children with disabilities, people that have ADHD themselves, or may not even have a diagnosis yet, it's important to do your work because in the long run, I think it's beneficial. And I mean, social media can be so bad, but yet it can be so great. I've learned so many things just by researching, and you can find little tad bits, but then don't just take what you see on social media, but you go research that for yourself and find out, is that really what it is or what it may work for you. I found so many tools. I said I would still be at that job today or moved up in that job today if I just had those tools. And one tool that I found that was very beneficial, people don't talk about FMLA the way they should. I didn't know about FMLA until this job. And so, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave your job for weeks at a time. It just can be a moment of, okay, I need to take a moment, or today is just a hard struggle day. And there's so many attendance policies and, micromanaging, and that you don't know how to actually function. So I think it's an important tool, and I will post this as well. Important tool that you can use with any disability is called askjan.org. askjan.org. It can give you so many tools for your life, so many tools for something you may be going through. It could be something simple as you have back problems, accommodations that you can find, accommodations that will help you through, like, for example, I was having some issues with my wrist, nothing to do with mental health at all. But you can ask your job for accommodations. From me talking about my arms hurting, I got a wavy keyboard, a mouse for my hand. I have a chair that is it is chiropractic approved. All that they sent to me only because I knew to open my mouth from the education, because I had the lack of knowledge. There's also things that even I just found out that vocational things like vocational rehab, things like that. If you have a child that is in college or in high school, before they get out of high school, if you assign them with vocational rehab, they can help them throughout college. And so these things are things that we are unaware of, because why didn't my HR or my manager say, have you thought about FMLA? No, because they're thinking about the business aspect versus the mental health aspect. And so I think it is very important for these tools to be readily available. And if you don't know, you gotta figure it out. There's so many resources. The internet can be looked at as so bad, or so many things that can go wrong, but there's so many things that you can find out. And I used to have a little resentment, like, what if I'd known about this, I would have. But it's not about where you've been, it's where you're going. So I think that it's important to look at those tools and those resources to help yourself and those around you.
That's another good thing about actually having a diagnosis, because it opens you up for more tools, more assistance, more things to help you, especially if you have kids in school. Yes, you can ask for accommodations anywhere, at school, at work, wherever. But when you have a diagnosis, those accommodations become greater. If you have a child that
Yes.
has ADHD, has a behavioral disorder, has is autistic, whatever, and you can get an IEP or a 504 or whatever it's called in your area. Make sure that you are utilizing those things. That one, you understand the things that you can ask for your child. Two, that child knows what's in their IEP or 504, so they know if they're in class and they're having a hard time, they can ask for a break. They can ask to be pulled out of the class to have a moment to calm down or regroup.
It's a
That they
tool.
can have extra time on their test or be in a quiet place. If they don't know what's available to them, they're not going to be able to take advantage of the tools that are in place to help them. But as a parent, you've got to understand what you can ask for and how to advocate for your child. Have those IEP meetings. Show up, go. Make sure that your kids' teachers are familiar with you,
The
whether they have
presence.
issues or not. Show your face. Be present. Let them know that my baby's not going to fall through the cracks. You're not just going to shift them off and do whatever. But also, to the FMLA part, you can use FMLA for appointments. If you have a lot of medical issues and you have a lot of appointments, you can utilize your FMLA and accommodations to get extra breaks, to get half days off, or your appointments excused if it's an ongoing thing. Lots of different things. Like she said, you can get equipment that's ergonomically correct. But some of those things require a diagnosis, require a form filled out by a doctor or a therapist. So if you're not going, guess what? No accommodations.
No accommodations for you. No, none. And so, and that goes back to, again, when we're talking about therapy, because sometimes I will say from experience, my daughter, again, Journey, she's 17, and it has been amazing the leaps and bounds that she has experienced, and the progress that she's made on things that I didn't even realize they were even discussing. So it blew my mind that one day she said, I had a meeting today with the accommodations department, because she's in dual credit, the accommodations department, with my therapist and myself, to let them know what I needed. And at first I said, oh my gosh, you didn't even ask me to come, like I'm not important. But it wasn't about me, because guess what? I've done my job, because she can advocate. I can feel confident in knowing, and happier, and not just happier, but comfortable in knowing that she can advocate for herself. She can say what she needs. And so at first, like I said, it felt like, oh dang, oh, my baby's growing up and she doesn't need me. No, I've done my part. So it is important to have those tools and teach your children. And again, if you're just now getting into whatever it is that you don't know about, or a diagnosis, or going to the doctor, these tools are so important for your life, but for your children as well. So I think this has been yeah, it's the education part. And so we can't blame our parents for what they didn't know, but we can now take responsibility and say, okay, well, my mama didn't know, but just because my mama didn't know doesn't mean that I don't know, because that we have too many resources. There's a lot of free resources out here that can help you, and people that are willing to help as well. So this has been a great conversation, and we were probably going to have a part two of something, because this has been profound. And with that being said, do you have any last words, Shakana?
I do. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, I don't have a date for it yet, but when we were talking about churches and pastors and all of that, I'm putting together, well, it's put together, I just have to find dates for it now, a pastoral care workshop to help pastors and ministry leaders, one, take better care of their mental health, but two, be a little more equipped to help their members take care of their mental health. So that's coming at some point this year. Stay tuned,
Wow.
because
That's
I'm very passionate about that, because I see the need. I see
wow.
pastors burnt out, exhausted, struggling mentally and emotionally, and burnout is the number one reason pastors quit. The number
Yeah.
one reason they walk away from the pulpit in their assignment. They get overwhelmed and exhausted. So I'm definitely passionate about that, and hope that if you are a ministry leader, or if you know one, that you'll come and do that. So I'll definitely let you know, so you can share it whenever I drop the dates for that. But the other thing
Absolutely.
that I wanted to say about mental health is practice good self care. A lot of our mental health issues, the root of it is not practicing good self care. And I don't just mean getting a massage and a manicure and getting your hair done. Self
That's
care
not it.
encompasses tackling all those pillars of wellness: physical, emotional, social, spiritual, financial, professional. All of those parts of you need care. Most of the time, we do really well with one or two, and we just completely ignore the rest. But they're
Hmm.
intertwined. So if you're not practicing financial self care and your money's a mess, guess what? Your emotional health is gonna be a mess, because you're worried about how the bills gonna get paid, how you gonna do this, how you gonna do that. If you're isolated and you're not practicing good social self care, guess what? You're gonna have mental issues, because now you're lonely, you're depressed, you're despondent, you're isolated, and we're wired to be social. If you're not practicing your spiritual self care, the devil finna take you through there, turn you every which way but
Take you
loose,
through there.
which is going to affect every
That
other
is
area.
so true.
So they're intertwined. You have to take good care of your whole self. Whole self.
Wow. That I had a whole something else with that. But we're gonna pause right there because I think we could go all night. But thank you again, Shakana, for joining me tonight with this piece. Hopefully, that somebody is listening and will be able to take one thing or one tool to better their lives, because there's all with all diagnoses, even with ADHD. Then there's depression. Then there's all the things that go to it, anxiety. So if you don't take care of one, guess what? The other ones are going to come out and they're going to rear their ugly head. So again, we can keep talking, but we got to shut it down. But I want you to to know that this will not be the last time. And I thank you so much for entrusting me and being so willing to be here tonight. But what I would like to say is, you've been listening to Curated on Purpose, where intention meets authenticity. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, live on purpose.